20 minutes. That's how long my internet was down while I fixed a simple router issue. 20 minutes, and this lunatic neighbor calls 911, claiming I'm conducting electronic warfare against America. Picture me, recently divorced cybersecurity guy just trying to work from my garage office, answering the door in my bathrobe to two confused cops. The smell of fresh coffee mixing with the sound of sirens, while Bethany's shrieking about terrorist attacks and pointing at my house like it's ISIS headquarters. But when those officers started asking her the hard questions, holy hell, they uncovered an operation so twisted it had federal agents kicking down doors across 3 states within 48 hours. My psycho HOA neighbor wasn't just stealing our peace and quiet, she was systematically robbing every family's identity and funneling hundreds of thousands through our community fund. What would you do if 20 minutes of bad Wi-Fi got you accused of terrorism? Comment your location. Bet this crazy exists everywhere. Because wait till you hear what she did when I started fighting back. Let me back up and tell you how a divorced cybersecurity consultant ended up in a war with a suburban sociopath. 6 months ago, I thought I'd escaped the chaos. Fresh divorce papers, decent settlement, and finally free to work from anywhere. So I picked the most boring place possible, Willowbrook Heights subdivision, the kind of neighborhood where the biggest excitement should be someone's garbage can blowing over. That first morning, the smell of fresh mulch mixed with diesel exhaust from landscaping trucks filled the air. You could hear the mechanical rhythm of sprinkler systems starting their dawn routine, feel the rough texture of new fence posts still oozing pine sap. Everything screamed, peaceful, suburban paradise. I'm thinking, perfect. No drama, no crazy exes, just me and my garage office. Then came the sharp click-clack of designer heels on pavement. Meet Bethany Cromwell, 52, drives a white Lexus that's detailed weekly, and somehow always looks like she's heading to a business meeting even at 6 a.m. She'd moved in 8 years ago and gradually appointed herself neighborhood queen. Those heels clicking during her evening patrols became my personal horror movie soundtrack. The welcome basket was pure psychological warfare disguised as hospitality. Instead of cookies, I got a 3-ring binder labeled Community Standards, not official HOA rules, just Bethany's personal manifesto. Gems like work-from-home activities must maintain residential character and exterior modifications require neighbor consultation. The passive-aggressive smell of her perfume lingered on that binder for days. The harassment started immediately. Comments about my irregular schedule when I'd grab mail at lunch. Questions about why someone my age wasn't properly employed in an office. Suggestions that my late-night work lights were inconsiderate to families. The way she said someone like you whenever describing my lifestyle made it crystal clear. I didn't fit her vision of acceptable neighbors. But here's what triggered the real war. I upgraded my internet for business class service. Cybersecurity consulting means protecting people's financial data, medical records, corporate secrets. Can't do that on residential Wi-Fi that cuts out during Zoom calls. The installation required temporarily interrupting service to our neighborhood node, standard procedure with 24-hour notice. Installation morning arrives with the grinding sound of truck engines and the metallic scraping of equipment being unloaded. You could taste the dust kicked up by utility vehicles mixing with morning coffee brewing in kitchen windows. Normal people might be mildly inconvenienced. Bethany, she went nuclear. Storms across the street while the tech's still working, her heels practically splitting the asphalt. Stop this immediately, she demands, pointing at the utility pole like it personally offended her. I conduct very sensitive business from my home, and this interference is completely unacceptable. I tried diplomacy, showed her the legal work order, explained the 24-hour notice, even offered my mobile hotspot as backup. But she wasn't listening. She was studying my equipment setup with the intensity of someone taking mental notes. People like you think you can just invade established neighborhoods, she says, and that phrase hit different. Not someone like you. People like you. Like I represented some invasion force threatening her perfect little kingdom. I have connections throughout this community and beyond. This disruption ends now. I figured she meant HOA complaints, maybe a call to the city. Annoying but manageable. 20 minutes later, during the brief service interruption for final connections, sirens started wailing, getting louder, getting closer, until they're parked right outside my house. Bethany had called 911, emergency services, claimed I was conducting electronic warfare against the neighborhood, interfering with critical communications, and possibly engaging in terrorist activities. The dispatcher recording later revealed she'd specifically mentioned my suspicious technical background and suggested I was targeting the community infrastructure. But here's what really caught my attention. When she made that call, her voice wasn't just angry, it was panicked. Like someone terrified their own secrets might get discovered. Like someone who needed perfect control over neighborhood communications for reasons that had nothing to do with HOA complaints. That's when I realized this wasn't about my Wi-Fi at all. 2 patrol cars rolled up with that distinctive crunch of gravel under heavy tires, radios crackling with static that cut through the morning quiet. I'm standing in my driveway, router manual still in hand, watching officers Martinez and Johnson climb out looking like they'd rather be dealing with actual crimes. Bethany's already positioned herself center stage on her front lawn, radiating the kind of righteous fury usually reserved for people who discover their neighbor's been stealing Amazon packages. The moment those cops step out, she launches into full Academy Award mode. "Officers, thank God you're here. This man has been conducting electronic warfare against our entire neighborhood." She's pointing at me like I'm holding a smoking RPG instead of a Netgear instruction booklet. "He's systematically targeting our communications infrastructure. This could be coordinated terrorism." Officer Martinez, gray-haired guy who'd probably heard every suburban conspiracy theory imaginable, looks from her to me to the utility truck. "Ma'am, can you explain what you mean by electronic warfare?" "He deliberately sabotaged our internet service during my critical business calls," Bethany declares, her voice hitting that pitch that makes dogs hide under porches. "I've lost thousands in revenue because of his cyber attacks." I had to physically bite my tongue to keep from laughing. "Cyber attacks? Lady, I updated a router, not hacked the Pentagon." Officer Johnson, younger and clearly fighting a smirk, turns to me. "Sir, what's your side?" I pulled out my phone, showed them the ISP work order with yesterday's timestamp, then gestured to the utility tech now leaning against his truck enjoying the show. "Routine service upgrade, officers. Temporary service interruption with proper 24-hour notice. Everything's documented and legal." "Exactly what a sophisticated cyber criminal would prepare," Bethany interrupts, and I swear the smell of her desperation was mixing with exhaust fumes from the patrol cars. That's when Officer Martinez asked the million-dollar question. "Ma'am, you mentioned business calls being disrupted. What kind of calls need internet to function?" Bethany's face cycled through more expressions than a slot machine. "Well, it's modern business requires. You know how everything's connected these days." Beautiful. Someone who just claimed expertise in cyber terrorism suddenly couldn't explain how phones work. For my years in cybersecurity, I knew that traditional phone calls use cellular or landline networks, completely separate from internet. Only VoIP calls need internet, and someone running critical business would definitely know that difference. "Officer," I said calmly, pulling out my phone to start recording, "I should mention that in our state, filing false police reports is a misdemeanor. I'm considering consulting my attorney about ongoing harassment. One-party consent state meant I could legally document every word of this circus." Bethany's eyes went wide when she saw me recording. "He's surveilling us. This is exactly the predatory behavior I warned you about." But while she ranted about surveillance, I caught something that made my blood run cold. She kept glancing nervously toward her house, and there was this acrid smell drifting from her garage, burnt electronics mixed with something chemical, like overheated circuit boards running 24/7. Officer Martinez wrapped up professionally. "Sir, your documentation appears legitimate. Ma'am, we'll file a report about your concerns." As the patrol cars pulled away, Bethany made one final desperate play. "This isn't over. Federal authorities need to know about suspicious technical activities in residential neighborhoods." Federal authorities? For routine internet installation? That seemed like a pretty extreme escalation for someone upset about 20 minutes of downtime. Then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Breyer from across the street approached me, glancing around like she was worried about hidden microphones. "I'm so sorry about this insanity," she whispered, morning breeze carrying the sweet scent of her garden roses. "But you should know, Bethany's done this exact thing before. Called police on the Hendersons when they installed a security camera. Reported the Johnsons for electronic interference when they set up a baby monitor. She seems pretty paranoid about technology," I observed. Mrs. Breyer shot a nervous glance toward Bethany's house, where that high-pitched electronic whining was now clearly audible. "Here's what's really weird. Anyone who asks questions about her behavior suddenly gets hit with HOA violations. The Hendersons moved out after 6 months of constant harassment. The previous family with the Ring doorbell, gone within a year. The pattern hit me like ice water. Bethany wasn't just randomly paranoid. She specifically targeted anyone with technical knowledge or electronic equipment. But why would someone be so desperate to keep tech-savvy neighbors away, unless they were running something that couldn't survive technical scrutiny? And whatever was making that whining noise in her garage definitely wasn't normal home electronics. I was starting to suspect my internet upgrade had accidentally threatened something much bigger than neighborhood peace and quiet. 3 days after the police fiasco, I wake up to papers sliding under my door with that distinctive rustle of bureaucratic warfare. The smell of warm laser toner hits me before I even see the letterhead. Willowbrook Heights HOA, violation notice. Apparently Bethany had crowned herself acting HOA president while I was sleeping. The previous president, nice guy named Bob Martinez, who'd welcomed me with actual cookies, had mysteriously resigned the week I moved in. Coincidence? In a pig's eye. The violation notice read like legal fiction. Unauthorized commercial business operations in residential zone. $500 fine, immediate cessation of all commercial activities, or face foreclosure through HOA liens. I'm sipping my morning coffee, staring at this document, thinking, lady, you just declared war on the wrong cybersecurity consultant. See, from years of investigating corporate fraud, I'd learned that fake authorities always make the same mistake. They assume their victims won't fact-check. So I spent the afternoon diving into our HOA bylaws like I was hunting malware. Turns out our community documents explicitly allow home-based professional services, always have. But when I searched for records of Bethany's election, things got interesting. Our bylaws require 30-day public notice and a quorum of 15 homeowners for any board election. Bethany's victory involved exactly 3 votes, hers and 2 elderly neighbors she'd apparently helped with their ballots. Basically, she'd staged a corporate takeover of our entire neighborhood. That evening, Dorothy knocked on my door. 73 years old, silver hair, and carrying a manila folder like it contained nuclear launch codes. I heard about your violation notice, she whispered, eyes darting around like we were being watched. Can we talk inside? Dorothy spread documents across my kitchen table, afternoon sunlight streaming through windows while dust motes danced overhead like tiny surveillance drones. That woman's been robbing us blind, she said quietly. Every time someone smart moves in, she finds ways to drive them out before they start asking questions. The financial records Dorothy had secretly copied were devastating. Payments to Cromwell Security Solutions, a company that didn't exist anywhere in state business registries. Unauthorized consulting fees that perfectly matched Bethany's personal credit card bills, forged signatures on $47,000 in community funds. Bob Martinez started questioning the missing money, Dorothy continued. Next thing you know, he's getting violation notices for everything from excessive holiday decorations to improper grass height. He sold his house rather than fight constant harassment. Smart woman. I immediately filed a formal request with the county clerk for all official HOA financial records, which by law must be available to any community member. Bethany's response arrived within an hour, and it reeked of desperation. Records currently under audit. Unavailable until further notice. Funny how financial audits always happen right when people start asking inconvenient questions. It's like watching a toddler claim their imaginary friend ate the cookies. But Bethany's panic moves escalated fast. The next morning, multiple security cameras appeared on her property overnight, all pointed directly at my house, not toward the street for actual security, but specifically at my windows, garage office, and driveway. Then came the surveillance drives. Bethany started cruising past at odd hours, stopping to photograph my house with a telephoto lens that belonged in a private detective's toolkit. The mechanical whir of her camera motor echoed through evening quiet like some predatory insect hunting. But here's where things got genuinely creepy. My security system started detecting electronic interference whenever she was nearby. Not random static, sophisticated targeted jamming that screamed professional-grade equipment. Late one night, reviewing footage, I caught something that made my skin crawl. During her photo sessions, Bethany was also using a handheld electronic device, pointing it at my house like she was conducting technical scans or signal interception tests. The constant whining from her garage was getting louder too, joined by industrial-grade cooling fans running 24/7. Whatever she was operating needed serious power and generated serious heat. My cybersecurity background was setting off every alarm bell I had. The equipment signatures I was detecting looked nothing like consumer electronics. This was surveillance gear used by private investigators, corporate spies, or intelligence agencies. Then came the night I caught her trying to hack my Wi-Fi network. My honeypot system, a fake network I'd set up to catch hackers, triggered multiple intrusion alerts around 2 a.m. Someone was systematically probing my home network with professional penetration tools. The attack signatures matched military-grade cyber warfare software I'd seen in classified security briefings. But the truly chilling part? The attacks were coming from inside our neighborhood, specifically from the direction of Bethany's house, which meant my psychotic HOA president wasn't just stealing community funds. She was running some kind of sophisticated electronic surveillance operation targeting everyone in our subdivision. The cyber attacks were just foreplay. Over the next week, Bethany escalated to physical warfare that would make a military strategist proud. My internet started failing with surgical precision, always during crucial client calls, never during Netflix binges. I'd be mid-sentence explaining network security to a Fortune 500 CEO when everything went dark. 20 minutes later, service would magically restore itself, leaving me looking like an amateur who couldn't manage his own connection. The first cable cut, I found fresh wire wounds behind my house that reeked of cut copper and desperation. Clean slices that screamed professional sabotage. When I called for repairs, the technician, a weathered guy named Rick, was genuinely puzzled. "Sir, that's the fourth deliberate cut this week in your neighborhood. Someone knows exactly which cables control what." But cable cutting was child's play compared to Bethany's psychological warfare. My mail started vanishing. Not Amazon packages or pizza coupons, specifically business correspondence. Tax documents, client contracts, anything containing financial data disappeared between mailbox and front door. The bitter taste of paranoia replaced my morning coffee routine as I realized someone was conducting targeted intelligence gathering on my personal life. Then came Bethany's social media blitzkrieg, Facebook posts about the dangerous cybercriminal in our midst, next-door warnings claiming I was intercepting private communications and conducting illegal surveillance operations. The irony was so thick it needed its own zip code. She was accusing me of exactly what she was actually doing. But here's what terrified me. Her posts used language like signal interception protocols, network penetration testing, and electronic countermeasures. That's not suburban mom vocabulary. That's cybersecurity professional terminology. The situation went from creepy to criminal at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. My phone exploded with security alerts as motion sensors triggered throughout the house. Security cameras captured two figures forcing entry through my back door. Bethany's unmistakable silhouette plus an unknown man in tactical gear carrying professional lock-picking equipment. They weren't after jewelry or cash. Footage showed them heading straight for my home office like they had blueprints of my house layout. When the alarm system activated, Mystery Man fled in a van with license plates that looked federal but felt wrong. I sent the footage to my cybersecurity contact who specializes in corporate espionage. His response arrived within hours. "Those plates are stolen from decommissioned government vehicles. You're dealing with professional criminals." That's when I realized this wasn't neighborhood drama. This was organized crime. While running network diagnostics that afternoon, I discovered something that made my hands shake. Multiple illegal signal jammers were operating within our subdivision, sophisticated enough to intercept cell phone calls, Wi-Fi data, and even garage door remote signals. The equipment signatures matched gear I'd seen in classified government security briefings. Someone was running a full-scale electronic surveillance operation in suburban paradise. Dorothy's second visit confirmed my worst fears. She arrived clutching a folder marked "Insurance Claims, Personal and Confidential," hands trembling like autumn leaves. "I've been investigating identity theft patterns in our neighborhood," she whispered. "Every family within a half-mile of Bethany's house has been systematically robbed." The documentation was horrifying. Dr. Peterson lost $30,000 to credit card fraud after his secure home Wi-Fi was compromised. The Johnsons' retirement account was drained through wire transfers they never authorized. Mrs. Breyer's business checking was emptied over 6 months of microtransactions. All victims lived within range of Bethany's electronic surveillance equipment. All reported strange interference with their devices before financial devastation struck. All had initially trusted their helpful neighbor who offered to monitor suspicious activity. "She's not just embezzling HOA funds," Dorothy said, voice barely audible above the hum of my air conditioning. "She's harvesting everyone's personal data and selling it to identity theft networks." That evening, I made a decision that would either save our neighborhood or get me killed. Instead of confronting Bethany directly, I began documenting everything with professional-grade counter-surveillance equipment. The The soft whir of hidden cameras and gentle hum of evidence drives became my new lullaby. My strategy was surgical. Build an airtight federal case, then watch her entire criminal empire collapse in a single coordinated strike. But Bethany was getting more desperate by the day. She'd started filing restraining order applications claiming I was electronically stalking her with sophisticated surveillance devices. The projection was almost artistic, accusing me of crimes she was literally committing against dozens of innocent families. What she didn't know was that I'd already reached out to federal authorities. My cybersecurity clearance opened doors that suburban HOA presidents couldn't even imagine. While Bethany was busy playing neighborhood tyrant, I was building a case that would land her in federal prison for decades. Because stealing from retirees and terrorizing families isn't just criminal, it's personal. And I was about to make it very, very personal. Everything changed when my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday. "Marcus, you need to see this right fucking now." Jake's voice carried that specific panic I remembered from our days investigating Russian cyber attacks. My former colleague at Cybertech Solutions never called after midnight unless democracy was ending. I was reviewing security footage in my garage office, the constant electronic whining from Bethany's house mixing with the smell of overheated hard drives and cold pizza. "What's wrong?" "Those equipment signatures you sent me, the surveillance gear your psycho neighbor's running, it matches an FBI bulletin about stolen military surveillance technology." My blood turned to ice water. Military technology? $2 million worth of signal interception gear stolen from Blackwater Security Solutions 6 months ago. "Marcus, your neighbor is using equipment designed to spy on foreign governments." I was already pulling up databases my security clearance allowed access to, fingers trembling as Jake continued. "Gets better. I ran deep background on Bethany Cromwell. That identity didn't exist before 8 years ago. But Elizabeth Cromwell Hayes has a beautiful criminal resume in Nevada, wire fraud, identity theft, computer crimes that would make Kevin Mitnick jealous. The pieces crashed together like a highway collision. She's been using stolen federal surveillance equipment to rob suburban families. That's just Tuesday for her. This operation has tentacles in Texas, Florida, and probably states we haven't identified yet. Same pattern everywhere. Infiltrate middle-class communities, become HOA dictator, harvest financial data from families with actual money. My laptop screen filled with financial records that made my amateur investigation look like a kindergarten art project. Bank accounts linked to 12 different criminal enterprises. Wire transfers totaling over $3 million. Purchase orders for additional stolen surveillance equipment. "Jake, I think I'm sitting on top of the largest suburban identity theft network in American history." "You're sitting on exactly that. And Marcus, the FBI's been hunting these people for 8 months. 2 hours later, I was staring at FBI Special Agent Sarah Breyer through an encrypted video link. She looked like she'd been living on coffee and determination for weeks, but her eyes burned with the intensity of someone who'd seen too many families destroyed by financial crime. "Mr. Marcus, your neighbor's operation is one of 4 coordinated cells we've identified. They specifically target communities with doctors, lawyers, small business owners, people with retirement accounts worth stealing and credit histories worth exploiting." She shared files that made my stomach churn, surveillance logs of my neighbor's private phone calls, intercepted banking passwords, shopping lists for stolen identities organized by credit score and annual income. The brilliant part, Agent Breyer explained, is psychological camouflage. Who questions an HOA president's authority? Who investigates neighborhood disputes when tech-savvy residents mysteriously move away? What do you need from me? Keep documenting everything while maintaining your cover as an ordinary neighbor. We're preparing simultaneous raids across multiple states, but we need evidence that will hold up in federal court. She handed me secure communication equipment and federal protection protocols. You're now a confidential informant in a multi-state organized crime investigation. This provides legal immunity and technical resources. As the call ended, I sat surrounded by classified documents that proved my suburban nightmare was actually domestic terrorism. The acrid smell of electronics mixing with the metallic taste of adrenaline filled my garage office like evidence of war finally being declared. My crazy neighbor wasn't just stealing from retirees. She was part of a criminal network that had been systematically destroying middle-class families for profit. But the hunters were about to discover they'd accidentally recruited their own executioner, because I wasn't just some random tech guy anymore. I was federal law enforcement, and these bastards had just made the biggest mistake of their criminal careers. Dorothy's kitchen transformed into a federal war room overnight, complete with the comforting smell of fresh coffee battling the harsh odor of printer toner, while evidence folders that could topple governments spread across her breakfast table like battle plans. "So let me get this straight," Dorothy said, adjusting her reading glasses as she studied FBI documentation. "We're three suburban neighbors about to take down a multi-state criminal network from the same kitchen where I make Christmas cookies. At 73, she was handling organized crime better than most people handle jury duty." Mrs. Breyer arrived at exactly 9 a.m. carrying folders marked Forensic Analysis, Confidential. Turns out my quiet neighbor wasn't just a retired accountant. She'd spent 3 decades as an IRS forensic auditor, specializing in money laundering investigations. If anyone could trace criminal finances, it was the sweet old lady who brought me homemade dumplings. "I've been tracking Bethany's financial patterns for months," she announced, spreading charts across Dorothy's table. "She's using textbook money laundering techniques, structuring large thefts into transactions under $10,000, routing payments through shell companies, timing withdrawals to avoid federal reporting requirements. This woman studied financial crime like it was graduate school." I pulled out the FBI's encrypted laptop, its screen casting an eerie blue glow across our makeshift command center. "Here's what we're building, a digital trap called a honeypot network. Basically, we create fake systems that look valuable, but actually record every criminal attempt to access them. The beauty of honeypot technology is elegant simplicity. You leave digital bait that cybercriminals can't resist, then document every crime they commit trying to steal it. It's like setting up a fake jewelry store and filming everyone who tries to rob it, except the evidence carries federal prison sentences. So we're running our own FBI sting operation," Dorothy said, her eyes lighting up with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for grandchildren's graduation ceremonies. Mrs. Breyer had been taking notes with the precision of someone who'd audited half the criminal enterprises in America. "What about protecting our neighbors? If this network has been operating for years, how many families are at financial risk?" I accessed the federal victim database through my secure connection. Agent Breyer provided protocols for community assessment. "We need to identify everyone who's experienced identity theft, unexplained financial irregularities, or suspicious electronic interference, then document everything systematically." The pattern that emerged was absolutely chilling. 23 families had reported various forms of financial crime over 18 months. Every single victim lived within range of Bethany's surveillance equipment. Every incident followed periods of heavy electronic interference with their devices. "She's been systematically farming our entire community for financial data," Mrs. Breyer observed with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen this kind of predation before. But here's where our plan got brilliant. Saturday's annual HOA budget meeting was mandatory for all residents. Perfect setup for maximum witness presence. The FBI needed 48 hours for warrant coordination, which meant we could synchronize public exposure with federal raids. "You mean we're confronting her in front of everyone?" Dorothy asked. "Better, we're presenting evidence of systematic financial crimes while federal agents simultaneously execute search warrants on her surveillance operation. Complete public vindication coordinated with criminal justice." The preparation felt like organizing a military campaign, if military campaigns involve septuagenarian accountants and homemade snickerdoodles. Mrs. Breyer created forensic charts showing money flows from community funds to criminal enterprises. Dorothy compiled victim testimonies from affected neighbors. I documented technical evidence that would make federal prosecutors consider early retirement from pure satisfaction. From my years investigating corporate fraud, I knew that criminals always make fatal mistakes when they panic. Bethany's increasing desperation to monitor my activities had triggered exactly the kind of reckless behavior that destroys criminal enterprises. My honeypot network had captured devastating evidence: unauthorized access to neighbors' home networks, systematic theft of banking passwords, illegal interception of private communications, identity theft operations targeting specific high-value residents. "Every attack is time-stamped and digitally signed," I explained, showing them logs that could fund federal prosecutors' retirement parties. "She's been hacking into homes to steal tax returns, medical records, investment account information, anything that can be monetized through identity theft." Dorothy leaned back in her kitchen chair, a smile spreading across her weathered face like justice finally arriving. "So Saturday, we don't just expose financial theft, we demonstrate how she's violated every family's privacy and security. the aroma of impending victory mixed with coffee and righteous determination in Dorothy's kitchen as we finalized plans to transform our neighborhood from crime scene to federal investigation success story. In 4 days, Bethany's criminal empire would collapse in front of everyone she'd terrorized, victimized, and stolen from. Our community would witness justice being served with all the drama of a Hollywood ending, except the handcuffs would be real, and the prison sentences would last decades. The moment we started building our federal case, Bethany's operation transformed from suburban surveillance into full-blown psychological warfare. Tuesday morning brought the persistent buzz of drones circling my property like mechanical vultures. The high-pitched whine of their rotors mixed with the smell of diesel exhaust from unmarked vans that had materialized overnight. 4 black sedans parked within a block, containing guys in wrinkled suits pretending to read newspapers from the Carter administration. It was surveillance so obvious it bordered on performance art, like being monitored by the world's least competent intelligence agency. But Wednesday's escalation attempt revealed just how desperate Bethany had become. I returned from grocery shopping to find a baggie of white powder, obviously baking soda or baby powder, tucked into my mailbox like some kind of bargain basement frame job. The acrid smell of fear mixed with suburban desperation hung in the afternoon air as I realized she was trying to manufacture drug charges. Fortunately, my security cameras captured the entire planting operation in stunning 4K detail. The perpetrator spent 5 minutes looking around nervously before shoving evidence into my mail slot, his hands shaking so badly he dropped the baggie twice. The license plate on his delivery van traced to a rental paid for with a prepaid card registered to John Smith, because nothing screams criminal mastermind like using the most generic fake name since Joe Average. Thursday escalated to threatening phone calls from supposed federal agents, warning me about cyber terrorism investigations. These clowns had clearly binged too many police procedurals, dropping lines like, "We have ways of making you talk," and "Your illegal activities are under federal surveillance." I recorded every call while eating popcorn because listening to criminals cosplay as law enforcement is more entertaining than most streaming services. Agent Breyer confirmed they were impersonators when I forwarded the recordings. "Real federal agents don't call suspects to threaten them," she laughed. "These people consume too much television." But Friday's desperation move crossed from amateur comedy into genuine criminal territory. Security footage revealed multiple figures attempting systematic infiltration of my house while I was grocery shopping. Not smash-and-grab burglary, professional breach operations targeting my computer equipment and federal evidence files. My security system triggered immediately, activating steel deadbolts and blast shutters that transformed my home office into a digital fortress. But the attempted break-in involved sophisticated lock-picking tools, electronic jamming equipment, and coordination suggesting serious criminal backing. They weren't after valuables. They wanted to destroy evidence that could send an entire network to federal prison. Meanwhile, Bethany's community smear campaign reached levels of projection that defied psychological explanation. She was telling neighbors I was under federal terrorism investigation and conducting illegal surveillance against patriotic families. The irony was so thick you could mine it for export revenue. She was literally describing her own criminal operations while accusing me of imaginary crimes. But her panic became our strategic advantage. Mrs. Breyer had been documenting Bethany's increasingly erratic behavior, revealing someone whose criminal empire was collapsing in real time. Bethany had started dismantling surveillance equipment in broad daylight, frantically loading boxes into moving vans like someone preparing to flee witness protection. The constant electronic whining from her garage had been replaced by industrial shredders running 24/7, destroying evidence with the efficiency of a corporate scandal cleanup. "She's liquidating everything," Dorothy observed during our Thursday strategy session. "Equipment, records, probably preparing for a complete disappearance." Agent Breyer confirmed our assessment during Friday's secure briefing. Criminal networks follow predictable patterns when they realize they're compromised, destroy evidence, eliminate witnesses, abandon operations. But Bethany made one catastrophic mistake in her desperation. She tried to recruit me into her criminal network. Friday evening, she approached me with what she apparently considered a subtle proposition. The smell of her nervous sweat mixed with expensive perfume created an almost nauseating combination as she leaned closer to whisper her offer. "Marcus, you seem like someone with valuable technical skills and expensive tastes," she said, her voice carrying the manic energy of someone who'd been awake for 72 hours straight. "I know people who could appreciate talents like yours, real opportunities for substantial income." I kept recording while pretending to consider her recruitment pitch. She described consulting opportunities involving community security monitoring and protecting neighborhood interests from outside interference. What she was actually offering was membership in a federal conspiracy carrying 25-year prison sentences. The FBI wire captured her entire confession, including specific references to surveillance equipment, identity theft operations, and coordination with criminal cells across multiple states. She thought she was recruiting an accomplice for her escape plan. Instead, she'd just handed federal prosecutors a recorded confession that would guarantee conviction on organized crime charges. 24 hours before our planned public confrontation, Bethany had sealed her own federal indictment. Saturday morning's secure FBI briefing shattered every assumption I'd made about suburban crime. Agent Breyer's face on my encrypted screen looked like someone who'd discovered aliens were real and they were running HOA meetings. "Marcus, your psychotic neighbor isn't just running a local operation," she began, and I could smell my coffee turning cold as the implications hit. "We've identified coordinated cells in Austin, Tampa, Phoenix, and probably 6 other cities we haven't mapped yet. You've stumbled onto the largest suburban identity theft network in American history." The files she shared made my amateur investigation look like a kindergarten finger painting. Financial records showing $2.3 million laundered through fake community accounts. Communication intercepts revealing coordination between criminal cells that operated like a suburban mafia. Purchase orders for stolen military surveillance equipment that could monitor entire neighborhoods simultaneously. "The equipment source has been identified," Agent Breyer continued, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd just solved a puzzle that had been driving her insane. "Corrupt employees at Blackwater Security Solutions have been systematically stealing and selling military-grade surveillance technology. Your neighbor's garage contains gear designed to spy on foreign governments." But the victim assessment was what really made my blood boil. Over 400 families across multiple states had been systematically targeted, robbed, and financially destroyed by this network. They specifically hunted educated, affluent communities, people who trusted authority figures and maintained substantial assets worth stealing. They researched property tax records, medical directories, bar association databases, even college alumni networks to identify high-value targets, Agent Breyer explained. Then they infiltrate through HOA positions that provide perfect surveillance cover. The methodical predation was sickening. These weren't random criminals. They were sophisticated predators who destroyed families for profit while hiding behind community leadership positions. Meanwhile, Bethany's psychological collapse was accelerating like a runaway freight train loaded with paranoia and desperation. Friday night brought accusations that every neighbor was secretly working for federal agencies. Mrs. Breyer was obviously CIA. Dorothy was clearly an undercover prosecutor. Even our mailman was apparently part of a vast law enforcement conspiracy. The woman had achieved paranoia levels that would impress psychiatric textbooks, but her breakdown created exactly the kind of reckless behavior that destroys criminal enterprises. Pre-dawn Saturday brought industrial moving trucks and professional electronics disposal teams working under floodlights to eliminate evidence. The acrid smell of burning circuit boards mixed with diesel exhaust as Bethany's criminal infrastructure disappeared into the night like a magic trick performed by someone having a nervous breakdown. Then came her most catastrophic mistake, attempting to coordinate network-wide evidence destruction. FBI surveillance captured Bethany's desperate phone calls to criminal associates across multiple states. Intercepted communications that federal prosecutors would probably frame as career highlights. Specific references to federal heat, discussions of eliminating witnesses, coordination of shutdown protocols. Instead of helping other cells escape, she's actually documenting interstate criminal conspiracy for us, Agent Breyer reported with barely concealed glee. Every phone call provides additional evidence of organized crime coordination. But the revelation that made this personal was community impact recovery. Our systematic documentation had helped federal investigators identify victims and recover stolen assets worth $1.7 million. Dr. Peterson would get back his $30,000 in stolen retirement funds. The Johnsons' savings account would be restored through asset forfeiture. Mrs. Breyer's small business losses would be compensated through federal programs designed specifically for identity theft victims. Your neighborhood's cooperation has made this the largest suburban financial crime recovery in FBI history, Agent Breyer announced, and I swear I could taste victory mixing with morning coffee. The final nail in Bethany's coffin was her recruitment attempt, which had triggered automatic federal conspiracy charges. Her offer to bring me into the criminal network was recorded by multiple agencies using surveillance equipment she couldn't detect, jam, or escape. Federal prosecutors now possessed recorded confessions, financial documentation, technical evidence, victim testimony, and proof of interstate coordination. The case was so airtight it could survive nuclear war and congressional investigation simultaneously. But Bethany remained completely oblivious that her criminal empire was about to be demolished by the combined weight of federal justice. Saturday morning arrived with the smell of autumn leaves mixing with the metallic scent of impending reckoning. Community members were gathering for what they assumed was routine HOA budget discussion. Bethany was preparing her final performance as neighborhood dictator, probably planning more violations and threats. Federal agents were positioning for coordinated raids that would simultaneously dismantle criminal operations across 4 states. And I was about to deliver the most satisfying public vindication in suburban warfare history, knowing that every word would be recorded for federal court proceedings guaranteed to send these predators to prison for decades. The criminals who'd terrorized innocent families were about to discover that justice, when properly organized, hits harder than any surveillance operation. The Willowbrook Heights Community Center had never witnessed anything like this. By 10 a.m. Saturday, every folding chair was occupied, the air thick with tension and the smell of burnt coffee mixing with nervous energy that could power a small city. You could practically taste the anticipation, like Christmas morning, except instead of presents, everyone was about to unwrap justice. News vans had mysteriously appeared in the parking lot. Channel 7, Fox Local, even a CNN affiliate truck with satellite equipment that looked like it could contact Mars. Apparently, word had leaked about unusual community proceedings involving federal law enforcement. Bethany arrived in her white Lexus like she was attending a royal coronation instead of her own execution. The sharp click of designer heels on pavement echoed through the parking lot as she surveyed what she still believed was her personal kingdom. She had absolutely no idea she was walking into the most spectacular public destruction of a criminal career in suburban history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bethany announced, commanding the podium with the confidence of someone who'd never faced actual consequences for anything. "We're gathered to address serious security threats endangering our community's safety and property values." The irony was so dense it probably had its own gravitational field. Here stood someone about to be arrested for running a multi-state criminal enterprise, lecturing us about security threats. Specifically, "We must discuss the cyber terrorist operating from 247 Maple Street," she continued, pointing at me like I'd personally bombed the Pentagon. "This individual has conducted systematic electronic warfare against law-abiding American families." I stood slowly, pulling out a folder thick enough to stop bullets. "Actually, Bethany, let's discuss security threats, starting with where $47,000 in community funds mysteriously vanished." The room went silent except for the nervous creak of folding chairs as 200 neighbors shifted for optimal viewing angles. Mrs. Breyer rose gracefully, carrying forensic accounting charts that could fund a prosecutor's retirement party. As a former IRS auditor specializing in financial crimes, I've documented systematic embezzlement from our HOA accounts. Forged signatures, fake vendors, unauthorized transactions, all traceable to one individual. "These are accounting discrepancies," Bethany stammered, but her voice had lost its imperial authority. "Clerical errors, misunderstandings that can be easily—" "Then explain Cromwell's security solutions," I interrupted, displaying financial flowcharts showing community money flowing to companies that existed only in Bethany's imagination. A business with no state registration, no tax filings, no employees, but somehow receiving thousands in HOA payments. Dorothy stood, her silver hair catching fluorescent light like a crown of righteousness. "Or explain why every family questioning your authority suddenly suffered identity theft, financial fraud, or mysterious violation notices. The pattern was devastating when exposed publicly. Dr. Peterson's stolen retirement funds, the Johnsons' emptied savings, Mrs. Breyer's business account drainage. Every victim had initially trusted their helpful neighbor who offered to monitor suspicious activities." "You're orchestrating a conspiracy against me," Bethany declared, her composure disintegrating like cheap makeup in summer heat. "This is harassment, defamation, probably illegal." "Let's discuss illegal activities," I said, opening my laptop to display technical evidence that made several neighbors gasp audibly. "Like the military-grade surveillance equipment you've used to intercept our private communications and harvest personal financial information. Signal analysis charts showed sophisticated electronic monitoring throughout our neighborhood. equipment designed for intelligence operations, not suburban security, professional-grade gear stolen from federal contractors and repurposed for systematic identity theft. Someone's been monitoring every family's phone calls, intercepting banking passwords, stealing tax information, medical records, everything needed for large-scale financial crimes. The room erupted in angry voices as neighbors connected dots they'd never seen before. Mysterious account irregularities, unexplained credit checks, strange interference with electronic devices. Suddenly everything made terrifying sense. "This is absolutely insane," Bethany shrieked, her voice reaching frequencies that probably violated noise ordinances. "You're being manipulated by a dangerous criminal who—" The sound of multiple car doors slamming cut through her hysteria like federal thunder. FBI agents flooded the community center with military precision, radios crackling coordination signals that made everyone's spine automatically straighten. Agent Breyer led the formation, federal warrant gleaming like a weapon of mass justice. "Elizabeth Cromwell Hayes, also known as Bethany Cromwell," Agent Breyer announced with the satisfaction of someone who'd spent months hunting this particular predator. "You're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, possession of stolen federal surveillance equipment, and conspiracy to commit organized crime across multiple state jurisdictions." The metallic click of handcuffs was the most beautiful sound our community had ever heard. I stood slowly, savoring the moment I'd dreamed about for weeks. "Bethany, I should mention, I've been working as a federal confidential informant for the past month, documenting your entire criminal operation." Her face cycled through shock, betrayal, and pure terror as federal agents led her away, while news cameras captured every moment for posterity. Justice had arrived with Hollywood drama, except the handcuffs were real, and the prison sentences would last decades. 1 year later, the smell of fresh tomatoes and herbs from our community garden has completely erased the acrid stench of burnt electronics that once poisoned our neighborhood's soul. Bethany's federal conviction was a masterpiece of prosecutorial artistry. 17 felony counts across 4 jurisdictions: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, possession of stolen government surveillance equipment. The judge handed down 7 years in federal prison plus $500,000 in restitution, calling her network a systematic assault on American families' financial security and community trust. The broader criminal enterprise collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. 12 arrests spanning Texas, Florida, and Arizona. $2.3 million in seized assets redistributed to victims. The corrupt Blackwater employees who'd been selling military surveillance technology to suburban criminals, they're spending the next decade contemplating career changes from federal prison accommodations. But watching Bethany get dragged away in handcuffs was just the appetizer. The real feast was community transformation. Our HOA underwent revolutionary reform that would make political scientists weep with joy. Dorothy won legitimate election as president, actual votes, proper notice, transparent counting. Mrs. Breyer chairs the Financial Oversight Committee with the enthusiasm of someone who spent 30 years hunting tax cheats for Uncle Sam. Every expenditure now requires dual approval and monthly public reporting that makes our budget more transparent than most government agencies. The restitution fund became seed money for something genuinely beautiful: the Willowbrook Heights Cybersecurity Education Scholarship. We're sending local kids to study digital security, creating the next generation of neighborhood defenders against financial predators. Dr. Peterson recovered his $30,000 in stolen retirement funds, plus interest that made the whole ordeal almost profitable. The Johnsons got their entire savings back through asset forfeiture magic. Mrs. Breyer's business losses were fully compensated, and she's now expanding into cybersecurity consulting because apparently surviving identity theft makes you incredibly attractive to other potential victims. My personal transformation feels like winning a lottery I never bought tickets for. From isolated divorce refugee hiding in a garage office to community leader teaching digital safety to neighbors who actually care about each other's well-being. The FBI commendation hangs in my home office, but the real prize is belonging somewhere that feels like family. The cybersecurity education program I volunteer to run has become a suburban defense model copied nationwide. We teach neighbors about securing home networks, recognizing social engineering attacks, and protecting personal information from increasingly sophisticated criminals. My personal nightmare became a blueprint for community empowerment that's protecting families across America. Our investigation techniques are now used in FBI training programs. Law enforcement agents learn about suburban surveillance crimes using case studies from our documentation. The strategies we developed for identifying and combating community-based organized crime have been adopted by neighborhoods from California to Maine. State legislation followed our victory, like dominoes falling toward justice. The Willowbrook Heights Community Protection Act requires criminal background checks for HOA board members, mandatory financial auditing, and stronger oversight of community organization finances. It's harder now for predators to infiltrate and exploit suburban trust. But the most satisfying transformation is sensory. Where Bethany's illegal surveillance equipment once hummed with malevolent energy, we now have a thriving community garden. Children's laughter has replaced electronic whining. Bees buzzing through sunflower patches instead of drones circling overhead. The gentle splash of neighbors watering vegetables rather than the mechanical clicking of surveillance cameras. Regular neighborhood barbecues happen in the same space where Bethany once held her intimidation sessions. Dorothy's legendary potato salad could probably negotiate international treaties, and Mrs. Breyer's homemade dumplings have achieved mythical status among local food enthusiasts. My cybersecurity practice thrives through referrals from families who learned that ordinary people can absolutely demolish sophisticated criminal operations when properly motivated and federally supported. But last week's phone call reminded me this work continues, a terrified voice from Oregon. My HOA president is monitoring neighborhood communications through utility company connections, and I'm pretty sure she's intercepting our phone calls. The really scary part? She's married to the sheriff, so reporting her feels impossible. Same pattern, same abuse of community authority. Same systematic targeting of families with assets worth stealing. Which means another predator is about to learn what happens when ordinary people fight back with federal resources and unbreakable community solidarity. If you've survived HOA nightmares or neighborhood bullying, share your story in the comments. These experiences help others recognize when they're being targeted and show that resistance is possible. Subscribe because next week we're exposing the Oregon sheriff's wife who thought law enforcement marriage made her immune to federal justice. Spoiler: federal agents don't care who you're married to.